we're back. Welcome to Real Friends and Music Never Ends, our 24th installments. I'm Mike, and I'm here with my friends Jose and Dave, and we seem to be on a roll here. Don't know if we're ever going to end these, but it's great. I love them. Okay, so the last playlist we did was all songs with women's names in the titles. And this time around, we thought it was, only fair. Let's cover the guys. So this is all dudes in the songs, and it's an interesting. I personally thought it flowed really well, and there's nothing on here I don't like. But we'll see. A little bit of good guys and bad guys in there. Some songs about musicians, and even a great film director, among other things. So we'll just get right into it. I started out. I was the first person this time on the playlist. So I put on "Sweet Baby James" by James Taylor, and I'll come back to that in a second. This first set, they were all James songs, which I thought was pretty cool. And followed Billy Joel did James, and that was Dave, and then Jose did James Dean by the Eagles. And so we'll get into you guys can talk about your songs. I'll just do mine real quick. Sweet Baby James, I've loved that song for years and years. It's, I think he had some records, James Taylor had some records before that, but he didn't. This really was kind of the turning point. I think this album has Fire and Rain on it and some other things. And just an amazing record, pretty short, lots of great, I don't know if it's Crosby, Stills and Nash or just one combination of those on a song. And Sweet Baby James, my son is James. We didn't name him because of the song, but it's kind of now his song in our house. And for years, not anymore, he's about to turn 17 this weekend, but for years I would sing him the lyrics to that. I'd sing him that song at bedtime. And then there were other songs we went on to. I'll talk about some other time. But yeah, it's just a well-crafted little song, him on acoustic guitar. So what do you guys think about that? And talk a little bit about your songs, and I'll come back and follow up. I guess Dave, you were second, so.
When you started out with this one, this was one of the ones on my list. I love the James Taylor, love the vibe. One of the first songs when we started thinking about guys' names was this song, "Sweet Baby James." So when you put it on, it was just one of those, like, for me, it was like, all right, that's one less song I have to put on. It's one of my favorites. Early James Taylor, as you mentioned, I think from 1970. It had Fire and Rain on the album, but he was just getting started at that point. He wasn't as big. Or we might have heard this song off the Greatest Hits album, and once they compiled and did all of that. But early on, this was one of his first. When it didn't chart well, it wasn't one of those things that at the time became a real hit song. But over the years, just because of James Taylor, it was enduring, and people have gone back to it, and again probably because it was on the Greatest Hits and other things too. Just a great lullaby, a great cowboy song, kind of a great northeastern song. Talks about Boston and the snow and all the things going on there. And I don't have any kids named James, but I always sang the song to my kids growing up, so it was a great favorite of mine. Good start for the playlist.
Oh yeah, no. Overall, the beginning is really solid all around. James, who kind of went with that theme. We tend to do that on occasion, more often than not, and we always discover different things as we're doing that. And as like you said, the first song's about a cowboy. Coincidentally, the last song's about cowboy. So it's just one of those things that seems to happen with us. And the same with this. And I look at the first three songs as kind of and I hate to use this, and I know you guys aren't pretty much Marvel fans, but some multiverse where all these James could either be the same person or dealing with the same things. You got the cowboy reflection, dealing with first he's a kid, and then he's reflecting. Then you got Billy Joel singing about it must be a childhood friend or someone that took a different route. And so he's like, hey, what are you doing? All that pressure was on you to succeed. This is another thing to succeed. Flowing right into James Dean, the pressure to succeed, the pressure that he endured, the icon that he became. So just throwing that out there as a wild thing that all those James songs seem to mesh well together. If you really look at it, they all kind of go to gel together in their own unique way. So I thought that was pretty fascinating.
You wanna add anything about your song?
Yeah,
James?
I was just gonna say that the combination of the James thing, I had in my mind to think about either my kids or whatever, and I knew you had a son named James. So after you played Sweet Baby James, it was natural for me to come in with the Billy Joel song because I had it on my list. I was gonna go, I wonder if Mike's ever heard this song that's just called James about a childhood friend and everything. It's a nice song. It was from his 1976 album Turnstiles, and it's just him on his Fender Rhodes playing that electric piano, and then it's got like a bass beat in the background or whatever. But yeah, I think he's lamenting, he's talking about his old friend, his old buddy, you know, just a kind of a cool Billy Joel song. And then James Dean, everyone kind of knows that song by the Eagles, and don't know a lot about how that all transpired, but obviously James Dean died early, died in a car wreck. I think he was in his 20s or whatever, big film star. For you kids out there that don't know who James Dean is. But I think what I read about this is that the Eagles were actually going to have that. They were going to do like a heroes or like an anti-hero kind of album, and they were going to put it on the one before that. But the album before that turned into more like country and desperado and Tequila Sunrise and stuff like that. And so it didn't make it onto that album. And then when they came to On the Border, it was just one of those ones where they pulled it off the shelf. They had already recorded and said, okay, now it's time for this one. We'll put this one on. And I also noticed that Jackson Browne was not only a songwriter on it, but was attributed to pretty much writing the song for the Eagles, which he's done some other things too for them as well. So
that sounds like a Jackson Browne song. Let me ask you something, Mike.
Mm.
You always refer to your son as James, never as Jimbo, Jimmy, Jim, Jimbaker.
Only when I want to mess with him.
Right.
No, I call okay. The names that he basically goes by from me are James, and that's usually when I'm being more serious, I guess. Or Jay, which is kind of a newer iteration, and then Buddy, which that comes from when he was first born. I got to be in the room on this one, and they say come around and check him out. So I go over there and like right when he first starts crying, and I'm like, hey buddy, and it just kind of stuck. So yeah, sometimes when I'll call him Jimbo, Jimmy JJ, all kinds of BS.
Right. I was just because some people will stick by that. Hey, can I call you Jim? No, my name is James. Just like my brother Robert, no one ever called him Bobby or Bob or
Bobby.
Right. But I had a friend who once called him Bobby, and he looked at him like he was half crazy. It's like, wait, what? What are you calling him? So, and then Salvador for the longest time wouldn't let you call him Sal. It was always, no, my name is Salvador. So, but then he eased up a little once he got into high school. They started calling him Salad and who knows what else. He was part of the basketball.
Those kids.
Oh yeah. So anyway, proceed.
Yeah. Oh, I will just add he, in for all purposes, he should be called Jim because he's named after Rachel's dad, who was Jim, and then my family has a long line of Jameses that at least my grandpa went by Jim. So yeah. So, but
had you heard the song James before today, or were you familiar with it?
Yes and no. I had heard it. I recognize it's like with the what was the one Zanzibar that you played before, maybe another one you've done. It's like once it started going, like, oh, I know this song. I never really gave Billy Joel a fair shake, but I loved a lot of the songs. I just hear like on a deep track. Back when you used to have radio stations that would play whole albums, Friday night 6-pack or whatever it was. And so I heard a lot of that, and I'd heard this one, yes. But I just recognized the arrangement, not the words. But so just getting right into that, I love that song. It's great, and it really, interesting message about be who you are, don't be who they want you to be. I wonder, do you know if that's based on an actual friend of his
I think it
growing
was,
up?
I read that it was, he wrote it about a friend of his.
I wonder what the rest of the story is. Does he have a biography or autobiography out there? I wonder.
I
I'll
bet
have
he
to-
does.
No.
Billy Joel, he's not.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has plenty of books written about him. I don't know. I've never really seen one, but I bet there's something out there.
The thing about that, and obviously being an artist and he can do that kind of thing. Think about for us too. I mean, there were probably a lot of friends and people we knew where either after high school or after college or whatever, they kind of split and you never really kind of hear from them again. But you think about, oh, I wonder whatever happened with them. And they were able to, like he says in the song, write his masterpiece. Hopefully he did well. But we all have changes in our life, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
Rick
in fact-
Russell is one. And you think with
Yeah.
Facebook you'd be able to find anybody, or LinkedIn, or all the social media. But I'll tell you what, Rick Russell is a ghost out there. That guy is a ghost. I don't know what happened to him. He's a friend of Dave's and I that we knew in high school. But
Well, if he stumbles across this, we need to have him,
right, I'm sure I don't know whatever happened to him. I visited him once, like he came by once after I think he was about to get married. You would never know. Anyway, and this was in the 90s. But then just you would think it'd be easy to find, but like you said, Dave, there are certain people that you go, oh, I wonder what happened to. Did they succeed in what they wanted to do? There's plenty of high school, and it's easier nowadays with Facebook and social media, but still, there's some of them out there that you can never find.
Yeah, I found that there's some people that I guess they just like to be off the grid. They don't do social media or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword though, because sometimes maybe you don't want to find out what you end up finding out when you look them up. I've had a couple of those.
That's
But,
true.
so James Dean, yeah, that's a great song. It's a classic. I had that. That was one of the first after Hotel California, probably the first Eagles album I got, and had some great songs on it. Coincidentally, this weekend we don't have cable. We do streaming stuff, but there's a couple of broadcast stations you can get on. We have a digital antenna, and one of them plays old movies, and they were playing basically a James Dean marathon. I caught a bit of Rebel Without a Cause and East of Eden. And then he did Giant was the last one he did.
Yeah,
and that's such a long movie. Say what?
There's only 3 movies he did, and he died before Giant actually came out. So
yeah, I heard there's a scene. I love that movie. It has its ups and downs. There's some stuff that's questionable about it, but there's a scene where his character becomes. We're spending a lot of time on James. Real quick, his character it becomes rich. He was like a poor guy, not really, raised with manners and such, and alcoholic, and he suddenly gets very wealthy and becomes this big shot in Texas. But there's this whole thing about it. He stays true to his roots, and he just falls apart. And there's this big national, I don't know what it is, some kind of convention. All these people are there, and his character shows up just totally drunk, slurring his words, and then basically passes out while he's up there speaking. And that scene, James Dean recorded it, but then he died soon after while they were still in production or post-production, and they realized they didn't really pick up really what he was saying because he was slurring his words so bad as an actor, and so they had to have somebody else come in and do the words on there. I forget the name of the actor. Somebody you probably heard of, but anyway, James Dean.
Well, you mentioned the James and Jim thing. I think he probably didn't want to be called Jim Dean or Jimmy Dean because then he didn't want to be forever linked with sausage. I think, yeah.
Okay. Are we moving on?
That's a dad joke right there. Come on. Man.
Well, that song "Rock On," he calls him Jimmy Dean. Remember that song?
That's right. That is true.
I always wondered about that. I never heard. Whatever. All right. Maybe his friends called him that. And he did die young. Okay, so moving on. You mentioned anti-heroes. We have quite a few on here, and they start start really heavy in the next section of songs. And they're also good guys and bad guys, or I guess one of them, gal. So I'll get right into it. I put on Outlaw Pete, song by Bruce Springsteen. Then Dave did Don't Mess Around with Jim by Jim Croce. And then we had Stagger Lee for Jose by The Dead. So Outlaw Pete, one thing I want to say in advance is I did not realize how long that song was. For some reason, I did not look at it's an 8-minute song. But I think you said something about this, Dave, when we were talking about it. Maybe when we were playing or doing the playlist. It's like when I heard it, it kind of just flows, and you don't realize, or at least I didn't realize, it was that long, And so I do apologize. Once I chose it, I'm like, oh well, shoot. I usually don't do long songs. But anyway, I apologize a little bit. I still like the song. It's kind of about it's almost like a tall tale, kind of one of those Western cowboy motifs, little kind of ridiculous thing when he started out as robbing a bank in his diapers and baby feet when he was 3 months. Well, he spent 3 months in jail when he was 6 months old. Obviously, it's ridiculous, but the whole thing is kind of like the tall tale kind of genre. It's like, but I like it. I hadn't heard it before, like I said. I like the arrangement and interesting lyrics. So so Dave, you want to start on your song?
No,
that
I'll just say I liked this song. It was probably one of my favorites on the playlist. Again, I wasn't familiar with it. I like Bruce Springsteen. I just don't know all of his stuff. And apparently he wrote a book, I guess, also. So there was a book that went with this about it, and then he had the album that went along. And to me, it didn't feel like an 8-minute long song because it kept building. And the cadence of it was that it kept getting a little bit faster and faster and faster. Other than it would take a pause every so often and go back to the chorus with the slow Outlaw Pete, do that part of it. And can you hear me? You do that, but then they get back into the upbeat storytelling, which I kind of liked. So if you really look at the lyrics and you listen to it all the way through, it's a pretty cool song, cool tale, and it. I don't know if it's indicative of what it's really sometimes like how Bruce Springsteen is, but not really. I mean, he's got a lot of different ways that he's put together music, and I wasn't really familiar with this style of music of his, and I tend to like it, listen to it a lot. It was a good selection. I got to give you some props for it. And then following that, I just went ahead and said, oh, what would be a kind of a good upbeat song after that? And that was Don't Mess Around with Jim with Jim Croce, and could have done Bad Leroy Brown at the same time, but I went with this one, probably the one that's probably not as popular, but I've always loved the lyrics of it. He's a big dude and he gets in fights and all of that, and you don't tug on Superman's cape, you don't spit into the wind, you don't pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim. But I've got to say something. I've listened to this song 1,000 times. I don't know how many times I've listened to this song. Never did I ever probably look at the sleeve and look at the lyrics until now. And as I listened to it and watched it, and looked at the lyrics, I realized, wait a minute, Jim gets killed.
Yeah. Well, you didn't know that? And they changed lyrics at the end.
I know, and then at the end it's like
Slim. You
yeah,
didn't
you don't mess around with Slim, not Jim. Jim
Yes.
is bad, but Slim is badder, man.
Right. That's the whole point of the song.
I know. Over my head. It was just.
Hey, I've got a couple like that on this list.
They even say it. That's the whole catch. Not that it's a good song and it's catchy, but yeah, no. And then, oh yeah, no, it's like you said, it's the more popular of the songs. I would have thought you would go with Leroy Brown, and as a kid listening to Leroy Brown, you heard it all the time. And this was, but when you got Don't Mess Around with Jim. Now that was kind of a little treat. Like, oh look, they're playing the other Jim Croce song. They're not playing the same one, which you'd be or Time in a Bottle, which, but really Leroy Brown and Don't Mess Around. So anyway, and yeah, and then I had Stagger Lee, which is Grateful Dead, just a typical Grateful Dead song. Didn't play it much. It's an all right song, but it has a guy, and it has its little song too. So like I said, we have the three anti-heroes, which gets us back to Outlaw Pete. I'm just gonna a little bit out. To me, Outlaw Pete sounds like, and my analogy is like Kevin Costner making Horizons. See, now y'all didn't see Horizons, did you? It's a good enough Western. It has all the tropes that you want, but it's almost like Kevin Costner's trying too hard, and this was kind of wrong with that movie. I watched 3.5 hours. I have nothing but time on my hands to watch. And there's a part 2 that may or may never be released. So going back to this reminds me of like Bruce Springsteen's like, I'm gonna write me a Western song, and here are my tropes. And it sounds like he's writing like those movies like The Mighty Wind and Waiting for Guffman, where it's like that mockumentary parody. And Bruce Springsteen's like, I got it, baby in a diaper, Robin. Things. And so it's kind of like a parody. And so that's why I kept dropping back to, and again, it has good lyrics, but it's just kind of like it's trying to, like, I've got to have him as a baby. And then that's kind of clever, but now I have a bounty hunter Dan, and he drew, but I got my knife and I stabbed him. And let me just throw this in, not that I'm go, but those parts that he's like, da 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 da. I was made for loving you. You listen to that song,
I thought of
and
that.
you listen to that. Tell me that's not the same exact thing.
There's
There's
several songs that you can go and think about the cadence and the
that one is almost spot on. In fact,
well, hold on. How about Call Me? The sound of that, and I was made for loving you.
Right.
Me in designer sheets.
That's what every time I'd hear that part of the song, I was like, I was made for love it. And I'm like, why am I singing that? It's like, well, because if you sing it while Bruce Springsteen, it fits right in.
Yeah.
So, anyway, like I said, it's not a bad song. And like I said, it's interesting enough, but I think it just tries too hard to like, I'm going to write me a Western song. Because like Dave said, Bruce Springsteen, I don't know if he's known for his Western country feel, and Outlaw Pete. Did he ever play this live in concerts, or was it just a one-off thing, or?
I don't know.
2014 is when he wrote the book and did the album.
Okay. So it might be newer stuff, and he's experimenting. Again, I give him credit for that. Like I said, but it just didn't. I just found it kind of funny that it was like he's writing a song, but it's kind of like someone in a mockumentary like Waiting for Guffman or The Mighty Winds were like, I'm gonna write a song about spring or the flowers, and then and that's what it reminded me of this. Anyway, end rant.
You're good. Did you, Dave? Did you anything to say about Stagger Lee?
Oh well, yeah. So I wasn't from. I mean, maybe I'd heard it years ago when Jose maybe played it for me, but
I'm sure.
I thought it just went so well with, I mean, you had Outlaw Pete, and then you had the Don't Mess with Jim, and then the Stagger Lee fit just nicely in there in that triad. Let's see, I wrote down a couple things about it. I guess it's really based on a story, and it's been covered and it's been done by lots of different groups. So it wasn't just like, oh, Grateful Dead, they did it. I guess and I don't know the story about how this all happened, but they turned it into that song and kind of immortalized it. But it goes all the way back up to American folklore and and all of that. So apparently people had covered it and sang about it well before the Grateful Dead did.
Yeah, and I'll start with that one. Just kind of talk about those. I did look this up on this part on Wikipedia, that it was based on probably an actual murder. It was I guess a pimp and his buddy, or what would have back in those days, I don't know if you called him pimp or whatever. It involved a dice game and a stolen hat, I think. But what I've heard this version many times, and I have to kind of go. I have to admit, kind of what you were saying a little bit ago, Dave. I never really paid attention to the lyrics. I'm just like, oh, it's Stagger Lee. I've heard Stagger Lee before, and so I paid attention this time, and I'm realizing it's like all the other Stagger Lee songs are about the murder. This one is following up, like his girl goes in and gets justice for him, shoots him in the balls. I thought, see, when I first heard it, I'm like, oh, she goes and shoots him. But no. She doesn't kill him. She just hurts him enough that this big guy, kind of like Big Jim, can be hauled off to be hung. So I thought that was kind of funny to me, my sixth sense of humor. And then Don't Mess Around with Jim. When I was, like you said, Jose, when we were kids, that and Bad Leroy Brown were on. Leroy Brown more, obviously, but I remember, there's so many songs I remember, like, I don't know, we weren't always in the car, but I remember hearing them on the radio, and my mom was driving us somewhere, and that one at one period came out a lot, and I loved that song. I was like, every time it came out, I'm sure at some point my mom would hear it and try to catch it and change stations before it came on, because I was like demanding we hear it every time. But yeah, this is the other lesser known but very similar story.
Right.
And
I get
yeah.
his comeuppance.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to add one thing about that Stagger Lee, because I was reading about it here, that it was actually based on a guy named his name was Stagger Lee, but it was really Lee Shelton was his name. And so they had kind of nicknames for it. And they said it was like Stackerly, Stagly, Stackerly. So these names kind of evolved over the years into different things. And then that's when the Grateful Dead kind of brought it back to just using Staggerly as the main one that they used for it. But I thought that was kind of interesting that there was a lot of different songs about this guy, and they weren't all called Staggerly. They were called different things.
Yeah, and I heard a lot of those earlier versions. I think Taj Mahal did one. There was one that was much more popular. I couldn't tell you who it was. I was going to say Ray Charles, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't Ray Charles. But yeah, I definitely had heard it. And just real quick, going back to my Cowboy song, I had not heard that before we started doing this list, and it was just like it jumped out at me. I really liked it, and so that's why I picked it. You make some fair points, Jose.
Yeah, it's a fun song. It's like I said, you got to give Bruce credit for going out. Hey, I'm going to try and write this and do this, But sometimes it's like I said with Kevin. Sometimes it works, and there's a lot of good parts in Horizons that could have been a hit, but it's just that it's missing that, I don't know, essential quality. Maybe, and again, maybe it's out of context. Dave was saying it was part of an album and part of a book, so.
Yeah, and I wasn't familiar with that either. I kind of got into him a little bit later in life, and after he got over his New Jersey stuff, just a lot of that I just couldn't get into. And now in retrospect, I'm like, okay, that's okay. I can never listen to Born to Run, but whatever. No offense if you guys like it. And the only thing I was going to say, he got the idea kind of from his mom. She used to tell him stories or something like that, and so that might be where some of this came from. But so enough of those guys. We go on to, at least we start out with an anti-hero. This is my song, and I guess these kind of go together. This is a transition section. We go from one more crime story to music. And I thought that they really went well together. And so my first song was Romeo is Bleeding by Tom Waits. I'll get back to that in a second. Late great Johnny Ace, Paul Simon, that's Dave's. And from Hank to Hendrix, Jose. Three songs I know very well, but my song, Romeo is Bleeding, Tom Waits, it's off a record that didn't necessarily get great reviews. I mean, it got mediocre reviews, but in retrospect, among people that like his music, it really resonates. It's not just that song. He does like I love this, but he does the cover of Somewhere off West Side Story. If you can imagine that in his voice. And there's some parallels with the whole Romeo and Juliet West Side Story thing somewhat through this, but this song is about a guy, Latino. I guess he was from the kind of the Pachuco culture in Los Angeles. I think it started in El Paso. I looked that up, but it's in Los Angeles. And he, this character, sheriff's deputy shoots his brother. So this is in like, I think it's like maybe the 50s or 60s. I get the sense where this is set, kind of like an old, not really film noir, but you know, kind of those detective writer kind of stories in a way, maybe Pulp Fiction kind of thing. But yeah, so his brother gets killed, and so he goes and stabs the sheriff's deputy to death. But as he's doing it, the sheriff shoots him, and he's basically through the song he's bleeding to death until he ends up dying in a theater watching a James Cagney movie. And one thing I read about, Tom Waits said this was based on a story that he heard in Los Angeles growing up there, but I didn't really need more details about that. So, you know, I like it. It's got that kind of bluesy, jazzy kind of thing, and there's some solos in there. Of course, you're getting Tom Waits sounding like he always does. You know, some people just can't stand his voice. I've kind of gotten kind of like Dylan. People complain about Dylan or Neil Young, and you know, their voice is right for what they do, and so for me, it suits the thing. But anyway, it's one of my favorite of his records, and I like that song. So have at it, Dave. What do you guys think?
Tom Waits, I've just got to say, is starting to grow on me. You've convinced me. You've put on some songs, and I thought his voice was a lot
Let's
less.
hear it.
Lot less. No, it wasn't that way. No, I think it was more melodic and more velvety and everything on this song than on some of the other ones. I love this song. This was a great song. I love the arrangements of it. I love that the feel that Tom Waits gives the lyrics of the song and how he tells this story. Like I said, it does transform you kind of back to that time. No, I thought it was really good. Other than the fact that he used some Spanish phrases I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah, I thought we were doing a little censorship around here.
I don't know if Jose can
Yeah, you don't want to translate.
There's one that you don't want to translate. The other's probably okay. I looked it up. It was like, what was it? Dame esa pistola, hombre. That's okay. Give me that pistol, man. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And vamos a dormir, hombre. Let's go to sleep. And then the other one I won't repeat. So,
Well,
it sounded like it was cuss words. And when I heard it, I'm like, that sounds like Spanish cuss words. Well, probably.
You know, those voices, they're like in the theater discovering he's dead, you know. So that's why they would say something offensive like that. An exclamation.
Right. No, it's a good song. I always go back to the movie, which is kind of similar with Gary Oldman played the lead. It's not a big movie, but I remember when that movie came out. Did they even use this song? That came out in '93, so that's why I think they used this song or they didn't use the song. Anyway, it's a movie.
The name must have come from it. The song came out in the 70s.
Yeah, so the movie came out in '93 with Gary Oldman, and it's a really good movie. And I think it's kind of the same where he's dying or something like that and has to find out. Anyway, no, I think it's a good movie. The question I always have though is, and the way he sings, I'm not going to bring it up. Never mind. And then
go ahead.
No. The late, it's too controversial. The late great Johnny Ace.
Okay.
Wouldn't that song be good? First of all, he's writing about Johnny Ace, and a guy dies in '54, which is probably Buddy Holly or someone similar to that.
Well, that's what I thought, but it actually said it was actually a guy named Johnny Ace.
Right, Johnny Ace. But who writes to somebody after they die?
Like John Lennon?
And wouldn't that song? And I'm going to sound like a complete a-hole here because I know better than Paul Simon, of course. Imagine if that song didn't have that first part, but started with "Remember the Beatles, Remember the Stones." If it
Mhm.
opened with that, I think that's a more effective song.
I like the transition of that too. Yeah, the first
Yeah.
part is really kind of a slow kind of
He's
thing.
talking about he didn't really know him, but I'm gonna write to get his picture after he's dead. Which
Right.
okay, I guess, but he's not really a fan. So that kind of like, well, why would you write for a picture if you're not really? I guess you're doing it because it's nostalgic and stuff. But I love the part. The second part is incredible, right? Hey, I'm
Right.
walking, learns about John Lennon dying, and of course now he's gonna go hang out with somebody and reminisce about John.
I'd like to be that guy that
Excellent.
came across the street when he found out and said, "Hey, well, come with me. Let's go to a bar and we're gonna close the place and you're gonna play all these songs." And like, who was that guy?
Right.
That
I mean,
would
and it good. And most of us learned, well, a lot of us learned through Monday Night Football. So, you know, to
exactly.
find someone on the streets and like, hey, did you just hear that? Imagine that happening, like, oh yeah, let's go, man. And if you're a Beatles fan, of course, I mean, it was heart wrenching. So, yeah. And then I went with from Hank to Hendrix. It's just one of the. It goes with Johnny Ace only in the sense that there's different touchstones of what heroes we have, but why can't we still get along even though your hero in some interpretation, in my term, you like Hank Williams, I like Jimi Hendrix, but then he sings in the song, why can't we, you know, and Madonna to Marilyn to Madonna. We all have different icons throughout the years, but he's still saying, well, you know, and then of course he's going through a personal, you know, divorce and stuff like that as well. So but you know, he's still trying to, you know, I think touch upon a couple of those topics of why can't we still get along even though we might have different varying views or different likes of music, we can still get together. So anyway, I thought all of those, especially those two songs, went kind of well together. Romeo's Bleeding though is just, it's a great song, but I'm not going to get into the controversy.
Yeah,
Um,
the Hank to Hendrix thing too was I kind of what you said as well. I think it's just he was going through a bad time, going through a divorce. I did like the lyric though, where he said, "Now we're headed for the big divorce, California style." You know, kind of now it's all in the papers and it's all in here and it's a big deal. And uh, he was kind of poking fun at like Hollywood divorces and California divorces, that kind of thing. But I love the harmonica in that, and yeah, it's a great song all the way.
yeah, that I love that song. It's off of kind of what I really started getting back into his music at Harvest Moon was the record it was on. And I mean, I was into some of his stuff immediately before that, but this one just really kind of stood out for me. And maybe more, it was more of the acoustic than in some of his other songs. I like both, but I had kind of missed his acoustic stuff. This song has I didn't realize you can hear it, and I looked it up because I thought it was the case. He's backed up by James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt on that, and then Ben Keith, who played his band with him and his band, the Stray Gators, and all kinds of stuff with a slide guitar. Just really love that stuff. Anything he contributes to. Yeah, I always wondered if this is, he's had a couple of, well, he's had what, 3 marriages and divorces now, or 2?
Right,
I'm
the
not sure,
last
how,
one,
but he,
well, when he went off with Daryl Hannah, that was the kind of the controversial because he was married to what was his name, Peg, for
Peg,
years, 20
yeah,
something years, and it's just like, and then out of it was just like, okay, no, this isn't work. And then he went with Daryl Hannah, which brings we always talk about Richie. Richie said that he actually was at when he was doing Sebastian Bach and they were at a festival. He saw Neil Young play and Daryl Hannah was backstage at the concert. He said she's still pretty nice looking. Anyway, just thought that out there.
Does she have her mermaid thing going?
Jeez.
That was a splash.
oh, I go off in a tangent here, but my teenage Mike sure did like Daryl Hannah in that movie, but that's not really pertinent here. Yeah, so anyway, I like the song. Late great Johnny Ace, it's strange because when it came out, I think I didn't like it so much because the whole John Lennon thing was so fresh, and it was painful, and so it's like, do I really want to listen to something to remind me of that? I mean, there were other songs. you know, George Harrison did all those years ago, and then later did Fab, or When We Were Fab, and I know there's another song or two that reference. Well, Paul McCartney did Here Today.
Elton John did Empty Garden.
Oh yeah, yeah. All those were all great songs, but they were hard to listen to. It's like for me, 'cause, you know, I guess it's better now, but so that song. Here's what my take on, because I kind of agree. It seems almost like more than one song kind of stuck together. But I've listened to it several times, and I was thinking about it. It's almost the two things kind of bookend the Johnny Ace dying and John Lennon dying. And reason I really thought about they were related is I remember, like you guys did, I went to bed early that night and I did not hear the news. I've seen the video. I'm sorry, the football game. I've seen the video where I guess Costello announced it.
What, you were watching Monday Night Football, Mike? That's so hard to believe.
Go ahead, take a dig in front of all these fine people. Whatever. No, I was not. But I do in the morning. I did in the Dallas Fort Worth area watch a show called Slam Bang Theater with the Three Stooges and, you know, some crap. And so I woke up really early and went there late on the couch and turned it on and I fell asleep. And then I hear this Beatles song in my life. And I hear somebody say, you know, something about one of the Beatles has been murdered or whatever. And yeah, that set me up, you know, like, oh shoot. I tried to get my parents to let me stay home. Well, my mom and stepdad, let me stay home. They're like, no, you're going to school. I'm so sad. I wore black that day. I mean, come on, give me a break, teenage boy. But yeah, but anyway, getting back to my point, I like that experience of hearing the news and, you know, how I can't speak for you guys, but how it affected me. And the first one was like, he didn't really have the background of this Johnny Ace guy, but the DJ saying, I hate to break it to his fans, but Johnny Ace is dead. So for some people, that was that they had that experience, kind of like when Buddy Holly, when they had you know, came through on the radio. And then he kind of tells the story how he got into the Beatles and how it's such an integral part of his life. And then ends with, then he has that experience, you know, that he didn't hear it on the radio, he heard it from some random person. I'm assuming that's a real story, who knows, but it certainly makes for a good song. So yeah, that's kind of a sad one, but I'm glad you put it on there.
Well, the ending too, there's like almost a minute or 45 seconds of that kind of symphonic, real slow moving kind of thing. And yeah, it makes you think or whatever, but I kind of agree. I would have rather not had that on that end either. Just end with you know, the more upbeat kind of thing for it.
I'm going to disagree with that, only because I think that ending part is Beatles-ish, in the sense that you could throw a Sergeant Pepperish type thing, or if you've ever seen Yellow Submarine with the thing, but they always were integral using strings and things like that. And if you listen to that portion, it has a Strawberry Fields type of thing. So I thought that was kind of brilliant, actually. You know, I think, oh yeah, that's pretty brilliant. He's bringing out what the Beatles kind of used to do, that they bring this kind of music in. The problem I had was just at the beginning, I just, you know, just didn't, you know, again, when John Lennon died, I didn't immediately go, you know, I need to go write John Lennon's estate and see if I need to get them send me a thing that John Lennon is dead. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. It should, but it just doesn't. It's just like, why would I write to someone who's already dead for a picture of him? Now, again, we live in a very different time, you know, from the 50s, where you're like, oh, in the 50s, I was, you know, we didn't have social media. So I bet back then it was more accepted, like, oh, he just died, I want a picture of him, just bring it in. But to me, it's like, okay, why are you right? You're not okay. But again, I think it, like Mike said, it's relevant to the point of he understands now how people felt when their hero died, and you know, so take that for what
I wonder how people will feel when Paul Simon dies.
Right. It's yeah, it'll be different. So
yeah, and I didn't, you know, I know the ending part you're talking about. I had never made the connection with the Beatles kind of strings and symphonic stuff, but you're totally right. now I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it. 'Cause,
Yeah, listen to it. It's
yeah,
good.
you know, I think
Point
I
for
can maybe
Jose.
tune it out a little bit.
Well, if you listen to, I listen to a lot of, I like Yellow Submarine. I don't know why it's not that great of an album or anything, but they do have those symphonic parts, which I kind of dig. So, but then I was listening to them and I listened to that part. And I was like, this makes sense. For some reason, it clicked for me that, yes, Paul McCartney used it, John Lennon used it in his songs. Why even, A Day in Life. So I thought it was kind of a stroke of genius. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so we went on the next three, kind of kept going on into musicians. My first one was Jackie Wilson Said by Van Morrison. And then Dave, you did Old Dan's Records by Gordon Lightfoot, and John Barleycorn Must Die by Traffic with Jose. The Jackie Wilson Said, there's like a group of songs. Van Morrison's done a lot of stuff. He's done a lot more mellow stuff, and then later in life he did kind of more cover of, I don't know, R&B. I don't know what you call that, but he did a lot of pop type songs, ones that you could hear on an oldie station now, like this one, although they don't play it as much as the others. Brown Eyed Girl, Blue Money. There's another one. Wild Night. And there's another one, Domino. So I kind of all lump those in together as far as the sound. I could just make a little mini playlist for myself and hear those. And that's what this one is for me. I thought, oh, let's bring it up a little more upbeat. And so that's where I went with that. Jackie Wilson, he did that song. He did a lot of stuff, but Your Love Is Lifting Me Higher. If that's the right name, which is a fun song. So he's referring to that, but it's just, I don't read too much into the song, but I thought it was fun. So that's why it's on there. Dave?
I thought it was a good kind of transition from coming out of the previous set of songs, kind of got that upbeat kind of thing going. And it's one of those songs that you all know, but you don't know. It's just one of those ones where, oh, I know that, but I didn't have the albums. I didn't know, but I know I heard it on FM radio over the years. Like you said, it's in probably that 5 or 6 or 7 classic Van Morrison songs, Tupelo Honey and Crazy Love and some other ones that he had, that were all fitting into that. So I wasn't that familiar with it, but when you put it on, I'm like, oh yeah, I knew right away, and it kind of got that 50s, 60s vibe and changed the kind of the I don't know, the mood and attitude of the playlist right then and there. It was like, all right, we needed this. We needed something to shift, and so I thought that was a great transition song. And then I put on Old Dan's Record, just thinking it would, something again along the same lines of just something upbeat and positive. And this is an old Gordon Lightfoot song that I didn't know about until I got his greatest hits or Gord's Gold kind of thing, and this was on there, and I just played it a lot over the years. And so when we thought about the names and everything, I said, well, there's Old Dan, there's Dan's Records, and it's just a cool little upbeat thing about getting around, pulling out Dan's records out, remembering Dan for that, dancing and doing all the stuff with that. And I just thought it went real good after that one. And then Jose came in with John Barleycorn, a classic. We all know that, we've used it before, but it had that little, has that same kind of feeling to it. So, well, not the feeling of dancing and having fun, but the feeling of let's get old John Barleycorn and take him out back and kind of around the woodshed and skin him and do all that kind of stuff. But
yeah. No, we talk a lot about regrets sometimes, and if I were smart enough, I would have found a Yonder Mountain, which kind of went with that, because every time I hear Old Dan's Records, which I enjoy, I always think of that Boatman Dance.
Yeah.
It would have gone perfectly with that song. I'm just thinking, Boatman Dance, and then it's like Old Dan's Records. You're just like, oh yeah, those would have been so well. So I kind of dropped the, not that when I put John Barleycorn and then I'd listen to it, then every time I'd listen to the playlist, I was like, why did I put that song on? But then again, as I listened to John Barleycorn, I'm like, that is a great song. So I can't get too upset, even though I was like, I kind of missed the ball there. I should have, because that Jackie Wilson said, another just fantastic song, which gets you all upbeat, gets you going. Like Mike said, it kind of changed the tone, of the playlist a little, but I enjoyed that a lot. And then comes Old Dan's Records, which is, fit right in with that one. And then, so I'll just say that was kind of my regret, my regret songs. Like, I should have found a Yonder Mountain. I could have easily, that would fit. But then again, sometimes it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I mean that's how it goes, and all our playlists have their own special characteristics. I like the song, and I get what you're saying, but it's a great song, and I could think of a connection besides just out there killing John Barleycorn. It's a metaphor for basically John Barleycorn wins because everybody gets drunk
That's right.
and he controls them, which you could tie back to Old Dan's Records, I suppose. I don't know if he mentions booze, but that was the first Traffic album I bought, and correct me, does it have Freedom Rider and Glad on it?
I think so.
I think that's why I bought that record. But then on the flip side, I think it's a flip side. Anyway, there's this great song, and it's kind of a long, kind of old English, medieval. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what style it is, but this is a great story, kind of a little fable, a moral tale, I guess you could say. So I liked it, and Old Dan's Records, also a good one. Those records, I guess, were 78s. He says. Sounds like a great memory. Again, in one of these, I wonder, is that based on a actual experience? Sound like Dan was his uncle, maybe, because he was dancing. Dan was dancing or used to dance with somebody. I don't know.
Well,
No.
I just hope that
My old MP, yeah.
someone does Old Jose's records and takes my records instead of just going, what is this shit? Let's just sell all these instead of going, let's celebrate Jose's legacy. Right?
Put on the tie-dyes and we'll do the Grateful Dead thing and we'll dance all night.
Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, I like it, and going to go right on into the last three, which is another musician. Then kind of sort of sums up everything. You've got that we did before, a musician song, and then outlaw and his nemesis or whatever, and then a great director of Western films and other things. So first song was Blind Willie McTell by Bob Dylan, followed by Poncho and Lefty, sung by Willie Nelson, Old Towns Van Zant written song. I assume he recorded it. I need to learn more about his music. And then Sergio Leone by Jackson Browne. He's come up earlier in this playlist, and about the great director. So I did Blind Willie McTell by Dylan, and like I think Jose said when we were talking about it before this, I first heard it after it was recorded on this bootleg series that he continues to put out. But it was the first one, and it was 3 or 4 CD set, had some amazing gems on there, things that were not released. Apparently there's tons more, which is probably why they're still making those compilations. But this song was on there, and I was like, why was this never on a record? And before I read about it, I was like, oh, this must be 70s, maybe John Wesley Harding period or stuff back with the band, or actually it was written for Infidels, which to me it seems like such an outlier for that record. I love that record. It's highly regarded, and it doesn't sound like it's from that record. But it's amazing that, I mean, he's made some interesting choices over the years, like Blood on the Tracks. He did the whole album, and then he scrapped it and re-recorded it. And there's bootlegs of the old versions out there. In fact, I think he put that out on one of his bootleg series. But this one, yeah, he just decided, I'm cutting this one. I'm not going to do it, and I guess what he says goes. And it's the only other music. The album was produced by Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits, and other things. and he plays guitar on it, which doesn't sound like, you know, a lot of his stuff. It's a very, more toned down than kind of his finger picking kind of thing. I just think it's a great song, and it's based on an old bluesman. The language about all these kind of dark images of the South, and I don't know Blind Willie McTell's story. I know he wrote Statesboro Blues, but beyond that, I don't know anything. I don't know how hard his life was, or that Southern references in blacks is something related to his life. So if you guys know, I welcome it. But anyway, so Dave, you had the next song.
Well, I liked the Blind Willie McTell. I'd never heard it, and so I guess I need to go check out this bootleg series because I don't think I ever owned it or really listened to it. So it sounds like there's some gems on it. But I thought the same thing you did, and I said 1983. Well, that's around the time of Infidels, and I love that album. Why wasn't this one on that? But he put it on the bootleg series, and the thing I liked about the song, I mean, it's classic Dylan telling a story about somebody, and that kind of thing. But it was piano. This wasn't him playing guitar, harmonica kind of thing. This was a piano which was featured in this, and to me, I thought it was beautiful. I liked the arrangements, like how they did it, and I didn't get tired of it. It was, I was looking forward to the next verse every time, and again, I just thought it was a great Bob Dylan song. Good choice. After that, trying to figure out a song to put on after something like that. And this wasn't even really one of the ones that was kind of on my list. I had a bunch of other guy names songs we can talk about at the end. But for some reason, that Pancho and Lefty jumped into my head. And then at that moment, I said, I'm going to go to Apple Music and type it in and see what comes up. And at that moment, I know the original version. I know the one with, well, two things. Townes Van Zandt wrote the song. I've heard his early versions. They're all right. He just wasn't. There's a reason why he wasn't this great, acclaimed singer, and that others took that song and made it popular. But the Merle Haggard version with Willie Nelson was really a good version of it. They had both of them on there. And at first I was like, well, I'll just put that on there. And then I the first thing that came up on Apple Music, it said, oh, iTunes song or whatever with just Willie Nelson. I'm like, let's do that. I played a couple seconds of it and said, let's do that. And I'm kind of glad I did because it was just a different version with just Willie Nelson's. Actually, there was another person singing on it, singing the harmonies on it. And then the third verse, I think somebody else, I don't know who that was. But he gave homage to Merle Haggard and to Townes Van Zandt at the beginning of the song. And it's always been a favorite Willie Nelson song of mine. And then with the guitar and the stuff that he's playing in there, I just thought, this is a way cool version of the song. You could even hear and understand the lyrics even a little bit better because he was a little more clear than the original song. So anyway, loved Blind Willie McTell, and then the Pancho and Lefty, and then I'll come back and talk about Sergio Leone after Jose jumps in.
Okay, yeah. No, I enjoyed all. I actually own that bootleg version because, like most people, are like, oh, they're gonna just release one or two of these. I was at half price today. I saw bootleg series number 8, so there's 8 of them at least out there.
Wow.
Maybe more, maybe less. Not to mention all the live stuff that he's put out there. I mean, you could literally get 50 Dylan stuff. But I saw number 8 and I almost bought it, so I held off because I had number 1. I had this version and I must have heard it, and I have it. I'm so old that I have it on cassette. So just to throw that out there. So when I first bought it, because I thought, oh my God, Bob Dylan stuff, and I must have heard it, but I didn't. But it really, when the Allman Brothers. I must have been at an Allman Brothers show and they must have played it, and they must have played the song. I'm like, what is this song? I don't remember this song. And so that's really where I kind of first heard it, and then went back and like, oh, that's right, Bob Dylan was the one who had it on the thing because I had that. But yeah, I enjoyed the Allman Brothers version. Obviously, I enjoyed this version. And then Pancho, can you ever go wrong with Willie Nelson? I mean, come on. It's just a good classic. And of course, someone who's moved to Ohio and realizes that Cleveland is cold, yes, it's all true. And then Sergio, I just kind of thought it went with the Pancho and Lefty, and I didn't plan that the first song would be about cowboys. The last song, it's not really about cowboys. It's about Sergio Leone, who kind of mastered the spaghetti western. And I like the lyrics a lot of in there, talking about he bequeathed to Peckinpah, talking about Sam Peckinpah, talks about John Ford, he talks about Howard Hawks, all these famous directors that came before him, how he learned and stuff like that. But I just thought it was a fun song, and an enjoyable song. And I liked the instrumental parts just as much as I liked the lyrics of the song. I thought they all blended well together. So yeah. And I didn't plan on it like, oh, start with the Western, end with the Western. Those things just happen at times.
Yeah, so go backwards again. That song, I'd never heard of it. I had kind of lost track of his music for a while. Boy, I seem to say that about a lot of musicians, but it's great. I mean, it's such well crafted, and the lyrics they don't just hit you in the face. You've got to kind of think about them, like things like, what was it? Goya and what is I actually wrote it down. Let's see. The darkness and anguish of Goya and Van Cleef. Lee Van Cleef would be the bad and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Goya, the famous painter, which, yes, he had some very dark themes. And yeah, and of course, I love his movies, but I have to say, I've only seen a couple. It's just not right that I haven't seen for a few dollars more. And much of Once Upon a Time in the West, and it's just I know, I can't explain it.
Well,
But
anytime you
of
can
course.
make Henry Ford a bad guy and kill a little kid,
Mhm.
you're doing something right. In
Yeah,
fact,
no kidding. Although supposedly Ford wasn't the nicest guy in
nah,
real life.
well, or Fonda, not Ford, Henry Fonda.
Fonda, yeah, I said it too. Yeah,
Fonda.
that's it. Yeah. Anyway,
They used to use
Yeah.
that clip when I used to see the Butthole Surfers. They would play that clip of Henry Fonda shooting a kid behind them. Always traumatic. Thanks for that. So
it's like
Yeah.
Shane. It's like just our old Yeller, just a brutal part.
The first time I played this song back after we listened to it originally, my first thoughts on this was it's a brilliant piece, but at the very beginning with the instrumental, I'm like, okay, when's he going to start singing? When's he going to start singing? And the first time I listened to it, I thought, man, this is taking a long time. But after I'd listened to it a couple, 3 times, I really appreciate that instrumental part that builds up to it, because he's about to tell the story about a great filmmaker, right? And then, as you already said, Mike and Jose, the lyrics just you got to focus in on. He came around here with this camera and some of his American friends, where the money is immortal and the killing never ends. And then he starts going into making references to the westerns and the people that have shaped who he was as a filmmaker. He didn't start out being a filmmaker producer. He had to cut his teeth on sets doing whatever he needed to do, right? And he did that. Worked his way up and learned under all these great filmmakers, and then eventually did the same thing, passed on his techniques and the things he learned and his things to others to carry on that same tradition. So I wasn't familiar with it. Love Jackson Browne. Love the song to end our playlist. It was great.
Yeah, I thought it was a good ending too, and it all makes me wonder if we should do another one of these discussions about movies, because I could talk for an hour on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's just one of my favorite movies for a number of reasons, but not today. And then see what was Pancho and Lefty.
What do you think about Pancho and Lefty?
Yeah, Pancho and Lefty. It was good. It was another one of these. No, I like it a lot. It's a great story. Another one of these that I didn't listen to back in the day. When Willie did it, I wasn't really into his music. That all changed about college age when I heard Redhead Stranger, but red-haired stranger, anyway, whatever.
Redheaded stranger.
Yes, I know. It's like I've heard this thing a million times and whatever. Anyway, I'm old. So, but yeah, I did not really, I had not listened to the story, and it's like I realized he died, but it was only like when you put this on, I'm like giving it a proper listen, like, oh, that's where Lefty comes in, because he doesn't say it, he kind of talks around it. Lefty comes into some money, Pancho is dead, it wasn't the Federales. Anyway, it's a great story. And Willie does a great job, but and Merle Haggard, of course, I've heard that version. But it does make me want to check out some more Townes Van Zandt, because he has done some other songs that people covered, that are well loved. And just one last thing back on my song, Blind Willie McTell. A little bit after this came out, the band covered it, kind of the later iteration of the band. And so I kind of heard that on the radio that way too. But I had never heard, I suppose it's on a live recording, the Allman Brothers,
Oh yeah.
because that sounds like it would be good. They covered Statesboro Blues by him, but I'm curious, so I'll have to check it out.
I'll see if I can dig up that bootleg somewhere.
It's interesting that Dylan sings about Blind Willie McTell. He was an actual artist and sang the blues, really. And then in the Pancho and Lefty song, he says, Lefty, he can't sing the blues all night long like he used to. Thought that was kind of a neat
That's
connection
good.
in the two songs.
Yeah, Lefty was shattered by what he did. He got a little short-term money out of it, but I don't think he ever kind of got past that.
He moved to freaking Ohio. Something must have cracked.
Right?
Who moves to Ohio? Oh, never mind.
Yeah, he goes from the border
Living in
region
cheap-
to Ohio. Talk about
Living in cheap motels, the desert's quiet, Cleveland's cold. So the
Cleveland's
story
cold.
ends, we're told. Yeah.
It's good lines.
Just in a cold room in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Zappa song.
Yes, so that's a wrap. I kind of wonder, we always kind of ask this, what could have been. I can't remember a lot of mine, but there was a Mark Knopfler song which I can't even remember the name of, but it's about a guy who's a copy boy in this English town for a newspaper, and it's a beautiful song. It's definitely going to have to make it onto a list. And then you mentioned Zappa, something from Joe's Garage, a pretty good chance I might have put that on. And the only other two I can remember right now, Pink Floyd, and they would never have made it. They wouldn't have fit anywhere, but Arnold Layne and Careful with That Axe, Eugene.
Careful.
I had to put them on the list, but they weren't going to make it.
Wow. Frank Zappa, I would put Bobby Brown, but that's probably not
Oh,
appropriate for anything.
yeah, English or Spanish,
ever
there's some
again.
troubling stuff in there.
Yeah.
Well, I have 4 boys, and I tried to think about their names, and so I have a son named Daniel, so could have done Daniel by Elton John. I have a son named Matthew. There's a couple songs, Matthew and Son by Cat Stevens, and a song called Matthew by John Denver. So those were a couple that I had on my list that I didn't get a chance to play. Some other ones, Rudy by Supertramp.
Oh yeah, it's a good one.
Chucky's in Love. I thought about that one. Ricky Lee Jones, kind of a cool vibe on that one. Saw of some Beatles, Rocky Raccoon.
No, the Beatles. Yeah.
And then there was a song that I wasn't familiar with. I'll have to find out, maybe put it on another one. It was called Michael by Graham Nash. It was a song about Michael Hedges, the artist. And so those were some of the ones I had on my list.
Yeah, you mentioned. Oh, go ahead.
No, I don't have any more.
You mentioned Chucky's in Love. That was she wrote that about Chucky Wise, who, along with her, played quite a bit with. For a while there, were friends with and played with Tom Waits, particularly Chucky Wise. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
And there's a lot of Jack songs, by the way, that we didn't use.
Jack Straw from Wichita.
Jack Flash, jumping Jack Flash, Jack in the Green, Jack Frost, Jacqueline, Happy Jack. Yeah,
Happy Jack.
Hit the Road Jack.
Yeah, that's a good one. I had when we started this playlist group that I chose from initially was men's songs, women's songs, that we've used on both of these. But I also had some last names, and then names about that would be about actual people, but it wasn't their first name, but they were men. So I was tempted. There's a Steely Dan song about Charlie Parker, but it doesn't actually say Charlie anywhere in the song, so didn't make it. But another one that we have all kinds of songs we haven't used yet.
Right. Well, that's a whole nother playlist. Last names for Mr. or Mrs.
Yeah.
Right.
Mrs. Robinson or yeah,
Oh yeah. Mr. Jones.
Mrs. Jones. That's a good one. Yep.
Mrs. What's the Herman Hermit song?
Oh,
Miss
no,
Jones.
Henry VIII? No.
Mrs.
Oh, Mrs.
No,
You got a love
Brown.
your
Mrs.
daughter.
Brown. You've got to love the daughter. That's it.
I bet that guy Herman. What's his name? Peter Herman.
Herman's.
Peter Noon.
He's no. It's the lead singer for Herman's Hermits was.
I thought that was.
Anyway, he has a following. He came to ONU, and there's like a group of people who just follow this guy around. And you're just thinking, you guys are insane. But very nice guy. And he's made his life singing that song. All right. I think they had 2 songs that were hits.
I like that song.
Yeah, I'm Henry VIII. I am Henry
Right.
VIII. I am. And did they do Ferry Across the Mersey?
Oh, was that the
Maybe they
Hollies?
didn't. Oh, well, see, I don't know. Then I get confused. Don't you mean the Monkees?
We'll just have to do a 60s,
I mean
60s British invasion playlist or something.
yeah. There you go. Well, I think this is one of our better playlists and one
Oh,
of
you're
our
right.
better
Peter
discussions.
Noon.
Peter Noon. Oh, no.
Yeah, he was nice.
Well, cool. Well, I guess everybody has their groupies up to a certain
Oh,
point.
well, you're always stunned when you're like, there's 15 people and they are just nuts for Peter Noon. Because we usually have like a little meet and greet before, and they're all, I wouldn't say dressed up, but let's just say they wore a lot of Herman's Hermits gear. And you're just like, oh my God, where did you people come from? But those people are popular, just like met Mickey Dolenz. It was the same kind of thing. You're just thinking people still know who Mickey Dolenz is, and they come out and see him. So
Yeah, I always thought he was kind of the lesser known monkey as far as singing. Oh, there you go.
now he's a surviving monkey.
I just like how it says daughter. Yeah, that's really cool.
Dolta. At least he has to be from Liverpool. It's got that. He has that kind of sound. And that song always makes me think of Six Flags, because back in the day in Six Flags over Texas and in the Dallas area, Arlington, they would have like music playing just around and speakers, and it was a loop. And I remember one day it's like, I cannot hear another time this Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter song. It's just too much. But well, we're getting into the weeds now, so I'll get back on the path here. Thanks a lot, guys. It was fun, and we haven't really fully discussed what the next one might be, so I look forward to that. You guys have anything else you want to add?
No.
Check out the playlist, listen to the music. That's what it's all about.
Right.
And if you want, make sure to subscribe. We can always we're up to what, 2? No, we're up to like 20, 21.
Woo!
Yeah, a year's worth of work, but we got there, baby. Anyway. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll see you for number 25 next time. Bye-bye.